Chapter 4 At Home with Grandfather, Part 1. Heidi, a 5-year-old girl, lives with her aunt, Date, in Mainfeld, Switzerland. Heidi's parents died when she was a baby. Date cannot look after Heidi any longer because she has a job. She leaves Heidi with uncle, Heidi's grandfather. How do Heidi and her grandfather get along? As soon as Date had disappeared, the old man went back to his bench, and there he remained seated, staring at the ground without uttering a sound, while thick curls of smoke floated upward from his pipe. Heidi, meanwhile, was enjoying herself in her new surroundings. She looked about till she found a shed built against the hut where the goats were kept. She peeped in and saw it was empty. She continued her search and presently came to the fir trees behind the hut. A strong breeze was blowing through them, and there was a rushing and roaring in their topmost branches. Heidi stood still and listened. The sound growing fainter, she went on again to the farther corner of the hut, and so round to where her grandfather was sitting. Seeing that he was in exactly the same position as when she left him, she went and placed herself in front of the old man, and putting her hands behind her back, stood and gazed at him. Her grandfather looked up, and as she continued standing there without moving,
"What is it you want?"
he asked.
"I want to see what you have inside the house,"
said Heidi.
"Come then."
And the grandfather rose and went before her towards the hut.
"Bring your bundle of clothes with you,"
he bid her as she was following.
"I shan't want them any more,"
was her prompt answer. The old man turned and looked searchingly at the child, whose dark eyes were sparkling in delighted anticipation of what she was going to say inside. "She is certainly not wanting in intelligence," he murmured to himself.
"And why shall you not want them any more?"
he asked aloud.
"Because I want to go about like the goats with their thin light legs."
"Well, you can do so if you like,"
said her grandfather.
"but bring the things in. We must put them in the cupboard."
Heidi did as she was told. The old man now opened the door, and Heidi stepped inside after him. She found herself in a good-sized room, which covered the whole ground floor of the hut. A table and a chair were the only furniture. In one corner stood the grandfather's bed. In another was the hearth with a large kettle hanging above it, and on the further side was a large door in the wall. This was the cupboard. The grandfather opened it. Inside were his clothes, some hanging up, others a couple of shirts, and some socks and handkerchiefs lying on a shelf. On a second shelf were some plates and cups and glasses, and on a higher one still a round loaf, smoked meat and cheese, for everything that uncle needed for his food and clothing was kept in this cupboard. Heidi, as soon as it was opened, ran quickly forward and thrust in her bundle of clothes as far back behind her grandfather's things as possible, so that they might not easily be found again. She then looked carefully round the room and asked,
"Where am I to sleep, grandfather?"
"Wherever you like,"
he answered. Heidi was delighted and began at once to examine all the nooks and corners to find out where it would be pleasantest to sleep. In the corner near her grandfather's bed, she saw a short ladder against the wall. Up she climbed and found herself in the hayloft. There lay a large heap of fresh, sweet-smelling hay, while through a round window in the wall she could see right down the valley.
"I shall sleep up here, grandfather,"
she called down to him.
"It's lovely up here. Come up and see how lovely it is."
"Oh, I know all about it,"
he called up in answer.
I'm getting the bed ready now.
She called down again as she went busily to and fro at her work.
But I shall want you to bring me up a sheet. You can't have a bed without a sheet. You want it to lie upon.
All right,
said the grandfather, and presently he went to the cupboard, and after rummaging about inside for a few minutes, he drew out a long, coarse piece of stuff, which was all he had to do duty for a sheet. He carried up to the loft, where he found Heidi had already made quite a nice bed. She had put an extra heap of hay at one end for a pillow, and had so arranged it that when in bed she would be able to see comfortably out through the round window.
that is capital.
Said her grandfather.
Now we must put on the sheet, but wait a moment first.
And he went and fetched another large bundle of hay to make the bed thicker, so that the child should not feel the hard floor under her.
There, now bring it here.
Heidi had got hold of the sheet, but it was almost too heavy for her to carry. This was a good thing, however, as the close, thick stuff would prevent the sharp stalks of the hay running through and pricking her. The two together now spread the sheet over the bed, and where it was too long or too broad, Heidi quickly tucked it in under the hay. It looked now as tidy and comfortable a bed as you could wish for, and Heidi stood gazing thoughtfully at her handiwork.
We have forgotten something now, grandfather,
she said after a short silence.
What's that?
He asked.
A coverlid. When you get into bed, you have to creep in between the sheets and the coverlid.
Oh, that's the way, is it? But suppose I have not got a coverlid,
said the old man.
Well, never mind.
Grandfather,
said Heidi in a consoling tone of voice.
I can take some more hay to put over me.
And she was turning quickly to fetch another armful from the heap, when her grandfather stopped her.
Wait a moment,
he said, and he climbed down the ladder again and went towards his bed. He returned to the loft with a large, thick sack made of flax, which he threw down, exclaiming,
There, that is better than hay, is it not?
Heidi began tugging away at the sack with all her little might in her efforts to get it smooth and straight, but her small hands were not fitted for so heavy a job. Her grandfather came to her assistance, and when they had got it tidily spread over the bed, it all looked so nice and warm and comfortable that Heidi stood gazing at it in delight.
That is a splendid coverlid, she said, and the bed looks lovely altogether. I wish it was night so that I might get inside